Okay, everyone, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Thank you for coming, everyone. Secretary's report, did everyone see that? And do we have any questions? Diane?
No, I'm waiting.
I'm sorry.
I just said no.
Can I get a motion to approve the secretary's report?
So much.
Second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Secretary's report. Now for the treasurer's report.
Okay, for our main checking account, we have $9,124.72. For our savings account or money market, a little under 2,800. Still earning about 5% interest, so hopefully, everybody wants the Fed to lower interest rates. We don't, because we earn more money. And, Robert Smith Fund, our gift fund is $17,389.13, and we just gave out our first scholarship of $750 the last week. Don't have our name here, but we gave it out last week. First one, so all told, we have about, a little under 30,000 between the three accounts. And I'm not sitting in any bills or any obligations or anything.
Great. Any questions on the treasurer's report?
It was actually our second scholarship from last year.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, there was a delay in her transcript getting to us, so we finally received it, and that's actually from last year.
Right. Get a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next on the agenda is Gail. Nightingale, she's still at the party at 5 days.
Wow.
Imagine that. We won't say it.
Can't keep a good girl.
I am.
Next up is a guest speaker from the Barnstable, town of Barnstable, Griffin Bowden. He's gonna talk about the traffic issue in town and what's on the table to resolve some of that. So Griffin? Yeah, there's a microphone too if you do need it.
I can be loud.
Okay.
All right, thank you for the introduction. I'm Griffin Bowden. I'm the town engineer for the town of Barnstable. I have just a short overview of kind of what we're doing relative to Osterville Village and traffic improvements, right? So we have a proposed project that was submitted for consideration in this year's capital budget for the installation of as we characterize it, up to 4 raised crosswalks on Main Street. Locations, we've kind of roughly mapped out where we think the best locations are, but the process will be to get the funding. We hope for that support in this upcoming budget cycle. Those votes happen in the April timeframe. The town council will be voting on the proposed projects. And then we'll be retaining a consulting engineer to assist us with the design of the raised crosswalks. We would be working with groups such as yourselves to work through the proposed locations. Again, we have some rough ideas as to where we think they should be. Pretty similar to where the current crosswalks are on Main Street. But we will probably necessitate some slight movement because of the design of those raised crosswalks. We have to make sure that we can get adequate ADA ramps and proper drainage past them. Also, not every current location will work perfectly, but we'll work through that process, and we will certainly bring forward to the group the designs that we come up with, and then we'll look to get it constructed. We anticipate probably about a 6 to 9 month design process, which would start hopefully over this summer with, if we're able to secure the funding from the council, which would put us on track for construction potentially as early as next spring. So that's kind of what we're doing here in Village Center. That's the proposed project that we have right now. Certainly would love to hear any feedback on that proposal, as well as any other areas of interest from the group. So, thank you.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
So did you say 4 proposed?
We included up to 4 in the budget, yes.
Oh, yeah.
I see it like needs 8.
Okay.
That's more in this bill, I mean, with Parker Road, Main Street.
Yeah, so the scope of the project that was submitted was specifically on Main Street.
Yeah,
So it did not necessarily branch out into every road in the village, but that's something that certainly could be considered as part of future planning.
It's serious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't disagree with that, but the scope that we started with was trying to identify Main Street. Yes, sir.
All three of us, and I speak for my neighbors, we all live on Parker Road.
Yep,
First house, I'm the third house, Chuck's the fourth house. And it is a complete racetrack. When they come around that corner by the agency, by the flagpole.
yeah,
They step on the gas and, that's why we had a speed sign. It's actually on my property and my house to slow them down a little bit. But we have little kids, we have babies, we have grandparents out there trying to walk their kids across the street is the most dangerous part of all of Osterville.
yeah,
Because they're trying to race down to Oyster Harbors, Little Island, and maybe the chart room, or wherever it is, you know. That is the most, I think, most important speed table you could put in will be in front of the agency. And then, the rest of them, the other three or wherever you're gonna have budget for, I think that you can accommodate them somewhere down Main Street. But with second Chuck's thing, you need probably a total of 8 in Osterville, the village to slow these people down. That cut down from 28 to cut through Osterville all the time, to go out to Craigville and everywhere
Right.
else in Centerville, everywhere else, so. That is the most important place it should be.
Just for purposes of notes, can you tell me exactly where you're talking about so we can?
Country Stores, the agency, the real estate agency with the flagpole?
Yes,
Right
right
when they
there,
come off that
just
corner,
immediate, okay.
when they come off that corner, that is a spot you could slow them down.
Okay,
Because if you get to Bay Street, to come across, people have almost got killed there.
Right.
There's 2 crosswalks right there.
right,
They're walking their families, their dogs across there. I've heard of stories just yesterday that a family had to dive out of the way so they didn't get run over and killed. And it's a
Yeah.
local family who lives down the street from there. So it's very
almost,
important.
it's almost a blind corner as they're coming past the gas station. They really can't see around the corner. And there's people coming out of Bay Street, the crosswalk is there. It's,
yeah, and I certainly, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I don't disagree with you by any means. Certainly that's the type of feedback that we want to get, right, as part of this process. We submitted the project we submitted this year based on feedback that we had received to date, which was basically we needed to do something on Main Street. Certainly we don't think that's the end of work in the village by any means. We are in the process of planning a resurfacing project of Parker Road for a couple of years, a year or so out. It may be wise to start trying to consider other elements of that project as well. So
Parker Road, coming on to Parker Road is not even considered in this four table, basically speed table project at all, right now.
right now, the scope as it was written was 4 on Main Street. Now, we could vary that slightly if as we work through this process that we decide
You're gonna go through
3,
the design and
right,
engineering process and
exactly.
everything else. I
That's
don't know
right.
why you couldn't take one of those out of there and stick it right in between.
I'm not saying we can't.
Okay.
I'm not saying we can't at all.
Yeah.
No, that's not what I'm suggesting whatsoever. I mean, there's nothing that's baked by any means. We basically budgeted for 4 raised crosswalks. That can move. There's no reason it has to be directly on Main Street.
I
Yes,
think
sir.
my neighbors have got it fairly well covered. I'm probably one of the newer folks.
Sure.
Here I'm at the first house on 27 Parker Road.
Okay,
They had the pleasure of Mr. Tadnico building for me. We moved in, October 16th of 22.
Yep.
Our dream house, our dream town, we lived in a condo here at, East Bay Road. And we finally got to, our dream house. Our
Right.
dream house is a dream house, but I don't think I would have gone through with the project had I known just how tough that corner is.
sure.
And Russ was pretty eloquent with it, as Chuck was. I live it every single day and I'd invite anyone to come here. Chuck had proposed a driveway, a circular driveway for us.
Mhm.
It didn't cut the mustard for whatever reason.
wouldn't allow it.
You cannot at all about backing out, forget that.
Yep.
So we have enough room. We put our nose out. And even as the car is approaching Parker Road and you start to go, I can't tell you how many times that a vehicle has come around the bend. You have now what we're talking about.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking
The
about.
area-
Absolutely. Yep.
The speed that
Yep.
they are going through is
Right.
just unbelievable. I invite anyone to come there at 7:30, 7:45, 8 o'clock in the morning and see what it's like there. It is, and it might be other situations, I'm sure other residents have similar issues. This has got to be one of the worst in town. They just, like Chuck said, they whip around that corner, somebody's gonna get clipped.
We're very passionate about it, because it is a town liability. When one of these kids, like my neighbors have 3 little kids directly across the street from us, if they step on that street, somebody's gonna get killed, and then the town's gonna pay for it then. We don't want that to happen.
And
That's why we're so passionate.
I'm by no means disagreeing with
Yeah.
you whatsoever. I agree there's an issue there. We certainly can leverage this planning process to try to figure out how we're going to address that. It's not necessarily budgeted in the project that we submitted, but that doesn't mean it can't be in a future project, or that we can't try to get it into this project by saving something somewhere else, right? So that's what we're in the process of doing right now. We haven't started the design, right? We basically identified a need for some raised crosswalks in the village, right? And we want to seek this type of feedback and try to produce the best project within the budget that we've identified to date, right? And if this ultimately results in, we need to expand project scope, and identify a subsequent project that identifies some of these other issues, we're certainly on board with that, and we welcome that planning process.
Russ, do you think if we put a crosswalk from Charlie's, it used to be Charlie's, across to the north side of Main Street, that would slow people coming west to east into town and also turning onto.
You mean a speed table right there?
Yeah.
Oh, I think the one that's just, if you go past the flagpole and you make a left to go towards the fire station, I think a speed table would definitely slow them down
Yeah.
somewhat, but they still want to get on, when they make that turnaround, come on the park, they still like to get on it.
Right.
It's
They
like
have to
something-
get over that first.
Yeah, they have to get over that first, right, exactly.
One of the locations we were looking at was coming right into town from the west, right? There's a crosswalk right there that we would look to try to retrofit. It might need to be a little further back than right at the split, just because there's a couple curb cuts there that we would be dealing with, but that's one of the locations that we've been looking at to start with, certainly recognizing the concerns that you're raising. And again, if
All you have to do is come down and sit on that corner for 20 minutes at 7:30 in the morning, and you'll see exactly what we're talking about.
Yep.
This is 7 days a week. This is from all night, all day. It's very dangerous. We live it.
And I recognize that. I'm not debating that, and I'm not saying it's not
And it's
the
not,
case.
it's not the auto traffic,
Yeah,
it's the truck traffic.
sure.
I mean, I've talked personally with Chris Joyce,
Yeah,
who has a beautiful business
Oh, yeah.
going here in the village. And I'll tell you, there must be 80 or 90 trucks a day through this village.
oh,
And
absolutely.
some of those trucks, I tell Chris, they're going through this village 35, 40 miles an hour. A 10-wheeler loaded with fill.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know how they'd ever stop if they had to.
Right, and certainly we recognize
Chris
that. and
recognizes it, he
The-
agrees with me and everything else, but nothing
The
happens.
raised crosswalks make a lot of sense for that
Yeah,
reason,
they
right?
do.
And so we recognize that. We typically, the raised crosswalks are very much a maintenance issue, right? And so we don't love to put them in, but
Yeah.
where there's locations where they make sense in village centers, in highly pedestrian traffic areas, we're certainly recognize that they're a good tool for
Marston
addressing
Mills,
these
they look
issues.
Great over at Marston's. Mills.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think, you guys are in the beginning stages of this project.
That's right.
If you could make an amendment to the project now at the beginning, so we don't have to wait 2 years to get something, if it doesn't slow them down on Main Street to come to Parker, that would be a very big benefit to the whole village.
Yeah, and so the first stage of this will be the design process, right, which will really shape the scope, right? And if ultimately it results in some scope increase, we'll need to seek more funds. And certainly it sounds like we'd have plenty of support. So
I've been told, what is it, 66% of the tax base comes out of Osterville anyway, so I think the town can probably afford it, right?
I can't speak to that, and I'm not suggesting otherwise. I'm just saying that would be the process we have to go through. I'm just trying to speak process right now, right?
No, I understand.
And I'm all aboard on the need. Yes, ma'am.
3 questions.
Sure.
Probably have more. One, you say that there would be a delay. What would be the delay
Delay,
in funding to get this rolling?
I don't anticipate a delay. So, no, we're anticipating that this will, So this was submitted for the capital budget cycle. The town manager makes recommendations
Right.
of projects. My understanding is this is one that ranked highly. I don't know if it will be voted. I don't make the approval, right? The council does, right?
You just said in the event that there's a delay, well, what would cause the delay? If-
Lack of funding would be the only delay, really? Yeah.
Like you just said, 66%.
And again, I don't make the decisions on funding, so.
Two, I work right on Main Street.
Yep.
Yes, Parker Road is a problem.
Yes.
I work right in front of the stop sign.
Yep.
And not only are there the trucks, but they're the cars. And on Friday afternoon, when all the yahoos like to go buzzing down to Lake Harbors.
Yep.
Do they think that I mean, half of them don't even stop at the stop.
Right.
They just go, oh, look.
Right,
I mean. Really, something needs to be addressed. And I used to also own a business right on Vienna.
Mhm.
And when a police officer used to come every single morning for breakfast and he used to park his cruiser out there, all of a sudden, everyone was stopping, like, coming to a complete stop, and I was like, my goodness, look at this. And then as soon as officer York drove away, well, so did everybody else. So they
Yep.
didn't even bother. So
thank you.
it's a big issue.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just following up on her comment, perhaps a police presence handing out speeding tickets for a while might act as a deterrent. Especially when they let them wait a half an hour before he writes up the ticket. Whatever landscape company or owner may be, all of a sudden he starts getting tickets to his business, perhaps that'd be a deterrent. Well, before the speed bumps are put in.
Yeah, and I can't speak to that. Obviously, I'm not from the police department,
Maybe
but
solicit the police from, say, hey, we got an issue here.
certainly. We will pass along the message.
Excuse me, what can we do in the meantime, if this is 6 months out for design and then next spring at the earliest, what can we do? Like before the summer, this spring, to address what's going on? What can the town do?
So let me think about that a little bit as far as short-term measures.
More signage.
Signage helps. Signage helps. Temporary speed bumps. They may or may not be effective, right? So we can take a look at what some short-term solutions potentially could be. It's tough in the areas we're talking about. There's a reason there's a capital project being brought forward there needs to be kind of more than paint and signs to address this issue, but certainly we'll go to the drawing board on some short-term solutions, as it sounds like there's certainly an appetite for that.
Do you have any idea what one speed bump might cost?
So the budget for the project is $680,000 for the 4.
$680,000.
That's right.
Put up,
Because it's not just speed bumps, right? So we have to put handicap ramps in, we have to put drainage at each one of them. We have to design it and we have to go through the competitive procurement process, and that costs a lot of money. Right.
Because you guys are proposing to put these at the crosswalks, is that why?
Not necessarily.
So why couldn't you move it off a crosswalk so you don't have to do all curb cuts and all these different
You have-
changes? Is that an ADA?
It'll be an ADA requirement, yes. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yep.
What are the crosswalks gonna look like? Are they gonna look like the ones out in Marshall?
So I'm anticipating we would look to match the ones in Marston's Mills or Barnstable, whichever ones were decided by the village. I
They
mean,
have two different kinds of. Barnstable.
yeah, so we can do the stamped concrete. That's what we budgeted for. So we budgeted high because that's more expensive, anticipating that would be desired. You can also just paint them too, but that's not what we're anticipating. We're anticipating it.
Summertime when they put those, I don't know what you call them.
Yeah, the little stanchions, yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, they become a fun element to hit. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But no, we budgeted some decorative stamped texture on the top of the raised crosswalk, kind of similar to what you see in the village, in Barnstable Village.
As I see the ones over in Martinsville, people don't even want to go back to those.
No, and that's
They're nothing.
that's-
They know that they're gonna slow down.
why we design them that way, right? So I mean, they're intended to be a deterrent. And they're intended to promote pedestrian safety as well. So they make the pedestrian more recognizable when they enter the
Especially on
crosswalk.
Indiana, because the real estate people, they're constantly walking back and forth, and
right.
I see parents with little kids and dogs and everything, and I'm like, watch, when you go across there, because you're gonna see a speed bump yourself for crying out loud.
Right.
Griffin,
Yes.
the ones in Barnstable Village, they look like they're brick, but those are the stamped.
Yeah, so that's actually asphalt that has a texturized paint on it.
Yeah,
Yep,
And some are extremely high.
they are.
They need to be more long than high. Cause I see the scrapes on it and bottom out.
Yeah, they bottom out because people go over them too fast generally, but with trailers, which there's certainly plenty of in the village here, right?
Yeah.
We gotta be cognizant of the height, but you want them to be somewhat high so that they are
Yeah, I
deterrent.
understand.
So that's
Yeah.
a point we try to hit.
This was submitted last year for the CIP.
It was submitted in this year's capital budget cycle, so the process is we submit projects around October, and then they go through the process.
You know who submitted it?
I did,
Okay,
DPW did.
okay.
Yeah.
I agree with everything that's been said here, especially on Parker Road. And the lead up for where like the crosswalk is, some say, Joan Peters across there. There's one there and there's one right around the corner on Bay
Right.
Street. I think one across from Joan Peters there
Mhm.
would get people going whatever direction they're going.
Right.
And there should be one right in the middle of Main Street and down east side, but I'm thinking there's gotta be not 12, but like 18. Okay. Yeah, I'm not talking, this is not talking, this is only in the village, I'd say there should be like 6 or 8.
Yeah.
But I'm talking going down, what you need to do is slow the traffic down as it comes from the north, okay, and also from the cut in Centerville. Okay, so you need to have them, there's crosswalks, say, at East Bay Road,
East Bay Road, yeah.
at East Bay Road.
Mhm.
There should be another one down farther, maybe another one down farther, so it actually slows these people as they're coming. Because once you get through the village by Robbins, or maybe even down by, maybe not as far as Starboard, but Swift or something like that. And the same thing going the other direction, out of town.
Yeah.
Should be one up by, say,
Pond Street.
Pond Street, and there should one be before that. I think it's, South Street that's right there, whatever that street is, South. Oh, Blossom, right in there. So I'm thinking we're really short, and we should really think, I'm gonna try to bring this up next year with the council.
Okay.
For the CIP, that we get to that point where we have at least, 4 in each direction coming in, and then what we have in the village.
Well, yeah, I mean, generally the process for bringing these projects
Yeah.
forward are, we as staff and the counselors will work with the various village
Yeah.
associations or interest groups.
Yeah.
To develop projects, right? The origin of this one was ultimately, we've identified a need for a while, and we worked with the previous town councilor to identify that Main Street was where we should take the first step,
Yeah.
right?
$170,000 a piece, it seems like outrageous, but.
Well, can I ask a
We
question?
certainly always work in plenty of contingency at the beginning
Yeah.
of these projects as well, because generally what happens is the projects grow, right?
Yeah.
And we're already, it was intended to be 4 raised crosswalks. We include plenty of contingency because we know that other things are gonna come up. So we always make sure to be a little fat with the request, because that just is the nature of the game.
On the cost, I reacted and you all reacted at that high price tag.
Yeah.
We don't know anything though, right? We've never built these.
Oh, no, we've built
No, I
them,
mean,
yeah,
we've
yeah.
never, so it just sounds sort of shocking
Yeah,
to our
yeah.
ears, I think. Can you just explain a little bit? Is it because you sort of outsourced the design and that's really costly? Is it the material, like what?
No, so the design is relatively small portion of that. We budgeted about $50,000 for the design. That's probably roughly high, but that's about what that is, and most of that is actually in mapping. The survey is a large portion of that, because you have to survey the corridor and get detail to make sure you design these properly. But yeah, the construction, municipal construction's expensive, it just is, right? And we budgeted for the texturized concrete, on the top. We also budgeted for, and this would be something we would work through with the village, but we did budget for the possibility of installing flashing beacons at these locations. So we always like to make sure that we budget for really everything that we anticipate could be in the project. And so that we're not in a situation where we don't have enough money. So we recognize that to build the speed bump, the raised crosswalks itself is not $170,000 just for that. But once you start adding decorative, surfacing, once you start adding, if we decide to install flashing beacons.
Is that what we did in Marston's Mills?
Yes, yep, yeah, so some of the raised crosswalks.
Would it say we need more?
Yeah, well, actually, ultimately, the project in Marston's Mills and Barnstable Village were 4 to 5 years in the making.
Are you talking about the ones downtown?
Yeah.
Or the brand new one that they just did?
The ones that they did a couple of years back, yeah, I mean, those were 4 to 5 year planning projects, planning and design efforts with the village before we ultimately built that.
All of these estimates should be pretty close to what you guys have done.
That's right, but we certainly did inflate it in this particular project because we recognized that there was probably going to be some additional scope that comes in. And we wanted to make sure we carried everything, right? So, to your point earlier, we may ultimately find that we actually have budget for 5. I'm not guaranteeing that, but we try to make sure that we leave ourselves enough room with these requests. But yeah, I mean, those efforts that you were just referring to, there were 4 to 5 years of planning with associations, with the village associations, right? Before we had the complete project. This one, the intent of this one was to be a short, a quick effort to get something in the ground quickly, right? I understand a year sounds like a long time, but that's about as quickly as we can do something like this. Just with all the requirements for procuring municipal work and everything like that. This was intended to be a quick hitter, where we get an improvement in the ground as quickly as reasonably possible, that we thought would bear fruit, right? And then certainly if there's a desire for a more larger, village approach, certainly I'm always around to continue to have that conversation and, we ultimately work for the residents, right? So we like to advance the desires of the residents, right? And so if there's a clear need, one, that's what we try to identify, right? And when there's a clear desire to have one of these planning efforts, which ultimately results in a project, that's what we do as staff support, so. Yes, ma'am.
Seeing as you're talking about a planning process and this committee, and certainly many of the people that had been here for many of our meetings, we're also concerned about 2 other spots.
Okay.
Of something different. And one is at the bottom of Tower Hill, the corner of Tower Hill and Main.
Mhm.
That because it really needs a 4-way stop in some way. That is a very, very dangerous spot to try to get out of at the end of, right by where Wimpy's is.
Yep.
Trying to get out of there because it's offset and it's really difficult to make. So when you're thinking about planning, I think you need to think about that spot. And the other one that I want to mention is down East Bay.
Mhm.
And we have been talking about it for a long, long time, and that's sidewalks that are definitely needed. A lot of people try to walk to Dowsers. And they come either from Riano or they come from Main Street, either way. So the sidewalk has to go all the way around and up to Bay. And I think it is really necessary, even in the winter time. I was just down there when we have one nice day and I was walking and you had to really jump out of the way of cars going down to the beach. Because there are some the road, takes a turn and there's some blind spots. And there was a person killed there several years ago, I think maybe about 8 years ago or so. There was somebody killed on that road. And I think that going forward, we have to look at that. People with baby carriages, I mean, there's all kinds of people walking up and down. So please put that into your planning mode. That I think that's completely necessary.
So relative to East Bay Road, I mean, there have been prior authorizations for design, and we have been working on that.
Sure.
So there was a survey that was done a year or 2 back, and we've worked up a couple of concept designs internally. Our anticipation of next steps is to bring the options to, associations such as yourselves, right? To view what the potential options are, but really what they look like is they could go on one side or the other. There's relatively narrow public right of way. And sidewalks would necessitate fairly significant impacts, along the frontage of the properties there, as well as in some locations, some easements or takings.
My understanding was that there were sidewalks there years ago. And it's just been grown over since then, so we're talking.
On
East Bay.
yeah, on which side of East Bay? So on the ocean side or on?
No,
Okay, because right now, I mean, if you go down there, there are a number of trees and stone walls that are relatively close to the road and fences and the such that as we've started putting pen to paper, there would be some fairly significant impacts to the frontages of properties, as well as in some cases, there's not enough physical space within the publicly owned right of way. So there would be the need to have conversations with property owners about easements. But that's the effort that we've taken it to date, was to basically lay out the options, one on one side, one on the other. And then another option we've looked at would be potentially converting it to one way, and using the other lane as a walking facility, right? As kind of an innovative thought, right? Those are options that we've looked at. We do have some concepts that we've worked up, and we intended to bring those to get some public input in the near future. Yes, sir.
With the blessing of the residents involved with this, you had mentioned something that I picked up on. And it sounds like you can go to a basic bump, or I don't know what the technical term is. And then you can add some ancillary items.
Yeah.
For the sake of immediate safety, is it possible that they might consider the worst situation, the most dangerous areas, put in maybe 2 basic units that don't have to be ripped up again, that you stay. And then if you get the money to do the extra things that you said with that, then move along with that. From a speed standpoint, there's a couple of real hotspots that we already discussed tonight.
Yep.
To maybe put in the basic and then.
Yeah, and
put
the
lights
and the initial authorization that we budgeted for is enough for with everything in it, right? So realistically, if we decided to take a basic approach, right? And not have, for instance, say, faux brick on the top so that it looks nice, right? Rather than just having paint, right? We may be able to install 6, right? Or some number larger than 4, right? So.
So I guess just a quick question is,
Yep.
is there a way to fast track this? Because we know that there are serious issues with safety and traffic. Is there a way to just speed up this process with some, even if it's a short-term temporary speed bump?
Yeah,
kind of
you
thing?
mentioned temporary speed bump.
Because I know there's a lot of time built in.
Right, so the temporary,
You
so,
don't spend the money to know.
yeah, so, I mean, ultimately, I can't do anything without the authorization, first of all, right? But second of all, the temporary options, we can certainly look at that and price that up. We have not found them to be overly effective in the past, and sometimes they tend to dislodge and end up the road, right? And so that would be our concern. They don't look that great either. So those would be some of the hesitancies, but certainly we can take a look at it.
Absolutely, but if there's a way to bridge the gap between what seems like a longer expansive design period and sort of a shorter term solution for safety.
Right, so ultimately, if the funds are budgeted, right, they become available to us to start spending July 1, right? The design, there will be a design process, even if it's expedited to say 3 months in a perfect world, right? That would still result in construction, best case, happening over the winter. But that's a real quick hitting project, and that's assuming no delays, right?
Are there any sort of, for lack of a better word, temporary speed bump stairs being used anywhere within the town currently that might be applicable?
We don't have any temporary speed bumps that I'm aware of in the town. There are on some private roads. Some people have taken the liberty to install some. They wouldn't be as effective on this type of roadway. They're pretty effective. They work for, a narrow road in a residential area, right? So we haven't effectively deployed temporary speed bumps on any of the major roads in town that I'm aware of. At least not since I've been here. Nor have I seen that really be overly effective.
Would that delay it though? If we use temporary speed bumps?
I don't think it would necessarily delay it.
Did Hyannis have this problem? Did Marston's Mills have this problem? Did Barnstable have this problem? Yeah, they did, but-
Which problem are you referring to? With speed? Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's why those projects happened, right?
You guys look at, why do I wanna do something under pressure? half-assed. Get it done right.
right,
Just go do it and do it right.
yep, and that's how we're intending to proceed, right? So,
So you keep saying there's a delay in funding. Why would there be a delay in funding? Get it
because I can't guarantee funding, because I don't ultimately vote on it, right? So, but I don't anticipate that, right? So, it's anticipated to be in the upcoming budget, but I ultimately don't.
They have beautiful speed bumps. Marston's Mills has beautiful, as they should. So why can't Osterville have beautiful?
And I don't disagree. I mean, that's why I brought the project forward as a recommendation, right? Again, recognize that the Barnstable Village project and the Marston's Mills project took 5 years to ultimately design and be funded. We're not talking about that here, right? We're trying to talk about an expedited project, but recognizing that things do take time to complete, even when we're working as diligently on it as we can.
In case anyone gets hurt, God forbid, in case anyone gets killed, God forbid. I mean, is that gonna move it faster? No.
Yeah, you're doing a very nice job.
Thank you.
So I just want to say that.
100%, but
Yeah, you are.
he's here talking for the town, so.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
the one that has to-
No, I'm with you, but I'm just saying you're doing a very nice.
Thank you.
Is there like a waiver process for some of the town procurement issues or requirements when the issue is public safety and like life?
Yeah, the town procurement, it's really not a town procurement process, it's a state procurement process, and ultimately what that means is we just have to go through competitive bidding.
Yeah,
But you have to have documents and a design to go through the competitive
are
bidding
there
process.
waivers ever to those?
It's not really so much of a waiver, it just takes time to work up the design, right? So we need to actually design the project so that it gets built right, right? And so that's what the time between the funding becoming available and us starting construction ultimately will be. It'll be some time to design the project, seek some input from the community as to what we came up with, right? Because we want to do that before we start building. And then go out to bid and start construction. And each of those processes, best case, are 3 months, and generally longer. Yes, sir.
Now, is there a timeline on the sewer project going through town, or is that? Or they do all this work and put these. speed
Yeah, that
tables
was-
And then come through and dig them all up?
So you're thinking the way I was thinking originally when we were talking about this project internally, right? So, I always try to avoid doing something like that. I mean, right, the sewer project is still proposed as phase 2 of the plan. That's been consistent really since since the plan has been adopted. So there would be a situation where if this when this project happens, when we go to put the sewers in, we would have to reconstruct the raised crosswalks ultimately, but usually we don't want to invest something that we're gonna ultimately potentially dig up in a short period of time. But when it's in the interest of public safety, it's the right thing to do, right? So, yeah, there was ultimately, that was one of the first things that came to my mind is, you know, I hate to go through the effort of this nice project, and ultimately have to dig it up, but that's ultimately probably what would happen once we ultimately come into the village to do the sewer.
The sewer project, is that much further down the line?
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately, right now it's scheduled between year 10 and 20 of the plan. You know, I think the only thing that
So it could be potentially 20 years out before they come down Main Street.
it could potentially be, it could also be sooner, right? I mean, I don't want to talk about the elephant in the room, but the proposed wind project, we would need to put infrastructure in the ground at the same time that was done, because ultimately there's not enough physical space in the roadways to build both projects, to come back and put the sewers in the ground if there was a duck bank in the ground. So that would be the only thing that would probably result in us modifying our plan, and come into the village sooner. But so that would be the only reason, but right now the plan is 10 to 20 years.
So that's not dead yet. They're still proposing they want to come to Delsa's Beach and either rip up East Bay Road or go down Wayano and destroy all of down.
There's still a proposal. Yeah, I mean, there's still a proposal by a private entity at this point, so.
I mean, you know, as well as I know, it's gonna destroy all these businesses down Main Street also. It doesn't matter which way you come. I mean, if you come down Main Street.
I can't speak to that. I mean, it's a privately proposed project. The town's not currently partnering with it, right? So, I don't really have any position on the matter. It's a proposed project, just like other developments are.
Russ, I can fill you in later on what's going on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Question two, that you had that installed at your house, the
Speed sign.
yeah, how much is that? Probably, at first, it probably made a difference, so how do you?
No, it makes, it still makes a difference.
Yeah.
It does. It slowed them down. They're a couple, I think they're between $2,000 and $4,000 what they are.
That's about right. What's your address again?
35.
35. Thank you.
That might be something that's, I don't know how, you know, time wise, but if everything's a year out, it doesn't solve what we're here.
Right, and so those radar signs, they're tools that we utilize at times, right? They're certainly not the panacea, but they don't hurt, right? Unless you have just somebody who's purposely wants to set it off just for the sake of doing that, right? But, and which some people do, right? So sometimes you can get some kids who think it's fun to do that, right? But yeah, sometimes, you know, having the feedback for a normal functioning adult is a good thing, right? They say, oh, I'm going too fast, right? But, so we do incorporate those, at times, and they are relatively short money. So it's something we can look at if there's appropriate locations.
I heard those are somewhere around $4,500. Was that maybe?
It depends, right? So there are some models that are relatively cheap. The ones that we end up installing, I think, are probably on that order, because we've standardized on a certain one.
I just had a constituent ask me this evening, about one up near, Busch Gardens up there.
Okay.
It's also busy, but we could say that about almost any road coming in here right now.
Right.
Especially Bumps River. I used
Yeah.
to walk on Bumps River and they're using a
Right.
cut through, now, which is crazy, but, the other thing I just wanted, one observation, I've been through Marston's Mills. It seems like it's overkill with the signs and the lights, because they're all so close together. I've been on Lewis Street in Hyannis by that little, what's the name of that market that's right there at Barnstable Road, that's, Willow Tree Market.
Mm-hmm.
You go down there and there's some bumps there, and they're well spaced, painted yellow on top, and it really works, and I don't think there's a lot of things except little bump signs. And those really work good in that neighborhood.
Castlewood has the same thing.
Yeah, so.
And those are, I'm not wrong, but those ones on, that he's talking about Lewis Street and Castlewood, I used to live in Castlewood. I mean, those don't have, they're not all ADA compliant, I don't believe.
They're not, because there's not sidewalks on either side. They're not connected to
But
sidewalks.
you could design the project where you're not incorporating by sidewalks. You could leave the sidewalk.
You could do that. We would feel that was short-sighted, because ultimately these are actually a pedestrian improvement as well. They're both a speed mitigation, but pedestrian, as well as pedestrian improvements, because pedestrians become more visible as they enter the roadway when they do that, on a raised crosswalk. You can also incorporate the flashing beacons as another item to make pedestrians even more safe entering the road. Given the location in the village center, we would think it would make a lot of sense to design these as crossings to improve pedestrian safety as well. So, yes, you can do that. I wouldn't be in favor of that.
I think over Barnstable Village, they don't have all beacons and crosswalks on there either. I think.
They do, actually. They don't all have beacons, but they all have crossings.
No, maybe a
Yeah.
couple of them, right?
Yep. Not every one of them has beacons. We kind of strategically place them where we feel that they make sense. Yes, sir.
Switch things a little bit. Any proposals about the stop sign at Main Street in Leano Ave? Street, Leano Ave. The Chesbro's Island there?
That's not something we're currently analyzing, but it's something we can go back and do and take a look at it. Yeah.
Or you sit there all day and
Yep.
one eye waiting for it.
Jimmy Ray, did you have a question or?
I was just gonna
Yes, sir.
say, Ray, the newcomer here, old comer, but anyway, it sounds like we need a more comprehensive mitigation approach. The speed bumps, it's like a great first step. But I've heard things like signage, police presence. But another thing I've seen a lot of towns and villages across New England is people, the visual striping type of thing, where they narrow the roadways through the stripes
Mhm.
inside the road. We could.
And those are techniques that we've employed elsewhere too, in some of the projects that have been discussed.
I hear the Park Road issue, but it's every road coming into the village and going out of the village.
Right.
And on to the next village, because this is a huge subject. The traffic on 28 there's a rush hour.
Right.
So everybody cuts through here to get to Hyannisport, you know, all the trades people are up there and then Marston's Mills up by the dump in those little, contractor buildings. It's not gonna go away. I don't think the speed bumps, be it 18 or 80, are gonna do it, not the whole approach, that's all, so.
I couldn't agree with you more.
You don't wanna talk about the strength.
I do.
Narrow the lane
Yep.
Visually.
Yep.
But it doesn't change at all.
Yep. I couldn't agree with you more, and we've certainly done that, and actually what ends up being more effective is actually narrowing the curve, right? Because it actually becomes a deterrent. And those are the planning processes that we were talking about, like with the Marston's Mills project, C Street down in Hyannis. We did the same thing where we really narrowed the road because it was a straight racetrack, right? We actually didn't even need raised crosswalks there because it's so narrow now that people think twice about speeding, right? Those are also multi-million dollar and multi-year efforts to plan those, right? So I don't disagree that there's certainly, probably warrants a larger planning discussion and a larger, more long-term approach to the village. This was not intended to be that. This was intended to be, again, be a quick hitter. But we gotta start somewhere, right? So, certainly I'm always available to continue to have discussions on this, and, I'm happy to be an advocate for bringing projects forward. I mean, that's ultimately what my role is, right? So, I'm happy to continue that conversation.
Well, the whole future really is more walking.
Right.
Walking. Smaller golf carts and EVs, right? That's the way the world's going.
Absolutely.
If we don't participate in that now, we're gonna be left with dust.
Right. You ultimately have to build the infrastructure for it, right? So I agree.
I thought that idea was great. Road was converting it to one way.
Yeah.
I mean, something like that.
Yep.
Think differently.
Yeah. That was East Bay Road. That was one of the concepts we came up with.
Well, isn't the setback though, isn't it 10 feet from every town road?
Not necessarily. It's different on every road. So some roads are a 40-foot wide right away. I think East Bay actually is. The road's generally 24 feet wide roughly. So you end up having like 7, 8 feet on either side, to work with. You can narrow the road somewhat, but at a certain point, you can't just go to zero, right? Like, you need to have a minimum of a 10-foot lane, to physically fit cars and larger vehicles. So, narrowing roads certainly is one of the best techniques for slowing speeding. But doing so with striping, is better than nothing, but, you really need to start bringing in some hard curbs or trees to make the roadway feel more narrow, such that you change driver behavior.
C Street looks great.
Yes, thank you.
Question from the audience, so yeah, I tripped in on my cell phone. Quick temporary fix could be, like on Strawberry Hill Road.
Yep.
Those blinking stop signs.
Yep.
You can stick one on right on Main Street.
Yep.
Make all the trucks, everybody stop
Yep.
before they come around that corner,
Mhm.
and you get your project done.
I don't disagree with you. It was actually one of the things I just wrote down in here, as I heard you talking. We've been employing those more regularly now. They take a little while to order. They're like an 8 to 10 week lead time, unfortunately, but then once they're here, we can put them in, right? So that's a lot shorter than a year.
The
Village Association would pay for it. If they could do it right away, maybe.
Yep, so we certainly we'll take a look at what the appropriate locations are. I don't know that necessarily will be necessary, but we have budget to do those types of things.
Sorry, hard
we'll
remote,
take
but 8 weeks is way before summer. It would be great.
It certainly is. Yeah, no, absolutely. So,
Blinking stop sign before coming around by the agency, by the flagpole,
Yep.
would solve a lot of problems for the whole village.
yeah.
Yep.
It would stop everybody, slow everybody down. Right. You guys could do your project. If it takes a year and a half
Yeah.
to get the budget, from town council or whatever you need to do, then you just design the thing correctly.
Yep.
That would solve a lot of problems.
I think it's a great idea.
There's already a crosswalk right there.
There is, yep.
There's a stop sign, boom, right
Yeah.
there.
Stop sign right there.
Yep. So that's something we can look at in the short term. It was actually something I was literally writing down as you were speaking earlier, to look at, because it's something we've been doing more regularly. We do occasionally get resistance to them, from people that live right there because they do flash,
Nobody
right?
lives right there.
I understand that, but I'm just saying in general, so,
We all live right there. We know.
yeah.
You
So,
can put one in Wimpy's while you're at it. Order 2.
No, seriously.
We'll take a look at appropriate locations.
I would definitely like to go forward with that, I think, right?
Yeah, it's a great idea.
It's good to hear support for something like that, so then we can work on the appropriate locations
They
and,
need to scope your project correctly.
Yeah. Great.
Make Wimpy's a four-way stop. There's already a two-way stop coming from the feeder roads, West Bay and Osterville, the Tower Hill. Coming the other way, four-way stop there, that solves a lot of problems.
Yep,
It also
so-
slows people, their speed going up the hill into the village.
we can do an analysis of that. We have to go through an engineering study for those types of things to make sure that they're warranted, because when a stop sign's not warranted, behavior tends to be, I'm gonna blow the stop sign because there's no reason to stop, right? So engineering practices that you need to go through and find, are there reasons for this? And so we'll go through that process.
How long does that take?
It's a couple weeks of internal analysis, yeah.
So we could follow up with you in a month, say, or?
Of course.
Any other questions for?
You know, over the years, the police department has spent some time, at least on Parker Road,
Sure.
with a motorcycle cop in one of the driveways, but it's it's all right for a few days that are, a few hours that he's there, but it's no deterrent, really.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I can't speak for the department, right? But, what we can do is put in like the speed radar signs as some sort of infrastructure that will remind people of their speed. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily enforcement, right? So,
It would be if they got a ticket.
it would be if there was an officer there. Yeah, I mean, I guess I was saying, I can't force an officer to be out there.
Right, so that-
We certainly can, continuing to bring this to the police department's attention and making sure that they're aware of everybody's concern. That they will respond to that.
I'll call the chief tomorrow. So we're here. Temporary.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you.
I think we're still done with that one.
Anything else?
Yeah,
but
She left.
Still there? Was.
She's not sure that she ever-
Disappeared.
Is she going?
I think she's left.
I need to that.
Okay,
Is it that bill? What's the bill?
I will move on to the town council's report. Go on.
Thanks, Pete, appreciate it. First report, I can get started. I just put my first, newsletter out. Okay, we're trying to build the amount of people on that newsletter. If you want to receive it, just go to my town council email, which is John Crow precinct5@gmail.com. It's free. Basically, I'll be talking about what's going on in the council. Hopefully, we'll now be looking ahead and we've not done before, so that we know what's coming down the road versus it just landing on our lap. It's been worked on for a couple of years by the town, and we don't know until the last minute. So that's one of the focuses I'm gonna do on. So if anyone wants that, you can share that with anybody, and I'll put you on the list. We just had we had a subcommittee meeting, the Felicia Penn, the chair of the town council, president, is putting together. We put together four meetings on the wind issue and on the water issues, contingent upon what's happening with the substations that are gonna be built in different places in Barnstable Village and Barnstable Village and down by Independence Park. So, we just had one last week. It's an off week for the council, so we had them discussing, the water departments discussing what their issues are with water. We're gonna have another one about PFAS, in a couple of weeks. Another one farther down the road that's gonna talk about, rivers and ponds and what the issues there with some of the effluent that's going in there. And there will be another one at the last, where we're gonna be talking back with the water departments of what their real concerns is and the possible dangers of to our aquifer of these substations that will be built through the wind farm throughout. There's one now in Independence Park. There's one proposed now for up by Oak Street. There's one that's going to be right where the old right on off 6A, where the old hotel was, right on exit 6, where the Chamber of Commerce building is, right there. That's a large So a lot of angst in the public about that, so we're gonna try to do that. The town council president is also putting together a number of committees. We tell you what they are right now. It's a committee to review the town council rules and town code. Okay, we have a number of conflicting or old town rules and town code that we're gonna actually go with a fine tooth comb and get rid of some of the things that's superfluous, and also be more specific about what the code entails. That we're committed to review the purpose, composition, functionality, and effectiveness of the standing committees of the town. We have some committees that haven't met in 5 years or 10 years. So those are still on the books, and we're gonna see which ones are completely necessary, which ones aren't, and take those off the books. There'll also be a committee to review and assess zoning and review of the town's use of regulatory agreements. There's a lot of issues about zoning right now in the downtown Hyannis, about what's going to happen with the form-based zoning that hasn't been actually passed by the town council. We'll go back and look at that, make sure that everything there is according to our zoning, or fits in the way we want to look at it going forward as for development. Committee to assess and recommend strategies for housing creation within the town. Okay, I think we're gonna take a little bit of different tack, and we have a number of large projects that are coming in right now in the town. I think we've somewhere around 900 units have been either in permitting now or been permitted coming out. We need housing, there's no question about it. I think we're gonna be now concentrating a little bit more on what I call orphan properties. There's properties around town that are unbuildable, they don't fit the zoning codes, they're not the size of zoning codes. And those are some of the places that we can spread out affordable housing in each of our villages that will be fit more into the character of the village than having these big, huge units put in. So we've got a little bit of both coming up, so I think that's important for us to look at. And as a committee, we recommend policy with respect to the town's acquisition and disposition of property and development of town-owned property. So we have a lot of town-owned properties that we're gonna be looking back at, see if those can be utilized in a better way in town for other reasons like housing and other things. So we'll be doing that also. So we're not in the budget season yet. It's coming up fairly soon, so we'll be going through that. And I'm a new council, so I haven't been through that yet. But I think there's generally, I see a sort of a change in attitude in the town about with the new council, about what is the important issues going forward and what do we need to look at. So I'm fairly optimistic that we'll be sort of straightening out some of the issues we've had in the past in town and making everybody work towards the same goals. So I'm willing to answer any questions somebody has.
John,
I
I don't know whether you're,
John.
if the Riverview School
Yes.
buying the old Dunphy's building.
They bought what is known as the Twin Brooks Golf Course at 35 Scudder, so it's behind that building. The building was purchased by the Irish Village Company.
Okay.
Okay, so from what I understand, I don't know anything about it yet, but I understand they're gonna refurbish the building and use it
So
for their.
we're not gonna lose hotel rooms.
No, as far as I know, okay, the golf course though is going to be the Riverview School. They purchased the property. We don't know what they're going to do with it. I assume they're gonna build a satellite campus there. Okay, there will be, from what I understand, I don't know for sure, there'll be some housing there. Some of these kids it's a famous school. Some kids come from, I have an older brother who was mentally handicapped. I live in Connecticut. We actually brought him over for a number of years to the Cardinal Cushing School here in Hanover, Mass, when we were young, for 8 or 9 years. So, and he had, he was there overnight and lived there for like a school year type.
Yeah.
I think this will be more like a weekly thing. They go home weekends and that kind of stuff, or it'll be daily drop off and that thing. I think there will be housing, but I don't think it'll be the scale, certainly won't be the scale of 13 units and 312 apartments that was planned on being there. So, I think, the Twin Brooks group is fairly, at this point, fairly happy with how it turned out, and we'll see how it goes in the future. Yeah, what their plans are. So, yeah.
Can I just make a comment about this subcommittee thing? So it's so refreshing, and I just want to take a minute to say something, because I always take time to be critical, right? Prior councils have created these ad hoc subcommittees without announcing their scope, without voting according to the town council on their creation. without setting a sunset date and just letting them roll year to year to year and take on issue after issue after issue. And frankly, management would gather in and participate in that, contrary to the town code. And there's a reason the town code, right, has certain procedures. It's so that we all know what's happening where and how and all that. So for all the times that I sort of criticized that sort of lack of compliance, I just take a minute to say, thanks to the new leadership for sort of doing things in a way that are, proper and visible to the public so we can all tune in and know what's going on.
And we're gonna try to standardize the procedures and make sure that they're followed. Okay, there has been a number of, in the past, there's been a number of committees that have been given assignments that are under the radar, about looking at zoning, looking at housing, looking at all these other things. Where there were, some of them were self-appointed. Okay, and also they didn't put out in public what their agenda was or their meeting times. Okay, and then you find something comes up into the town council that you're saying, well, where did that come from? Well, we've been working on it for 2 years in the blah, blah, blah committee. But there were no agendas, no meeting notices. And that's not allowed by town code or state town code. Anything that's a committee, a town committee, has to have, public participation, ability to watch what's going on. So that's not gonna happen anymore, as far as we're concerned. So we're gonna try to make sure that everything goes up in front of the public, so everybody can see. There'll be, of course, back and forth and everything else is like anything else, but at least there won't be. We're hoping not to get issues that all of a sudden just show up on our plate and you've got a reading and then a vote by the town council within 2 weeks. It's something that the town and people in the town have been working on for 2 or 3 years without the public knowing what's going on. Okay, and that was one of my big beefs, and what I ran for is to get back to transparency and back to regular work. So we're gonna try to do that. I think it'll be good for the town too.
Right, so if there is potential for conflict of interest, it'll be visible.
Yes,
So people will know.
yes. So that's my report. Maybe it's something else. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, John. Just a quick comment on that property. And I've heard this from a few different people that school is very conscientious on preserving some of that land. I mean, there's woodland areas, there's an estuary, there's gonna be a beautiful property. There's gonna be like a campus setting. And it's gonna be very done, again, very, with taking all the whole parcel into effect. They're talking about maybe putting some into conservation, so it's gonna be a very well planned out, which is a lot different from what they had planned before with the developer, so I think that's very positive.
I actually sit on the Save Twin Brooks board and I'll say that we sent a welcome to the neighborhood note to that, to the,
That's good.
yeah, I mean, it's really a shift.
Oh, that's great, good news.
And I will say, sorry, we'll say that at one point, there was the same type of idea for the baseball over here. And that was something that the village association at the time actually wrote a note behind that we were in favor of. It was a school for autistic adults, more like that. And they'd have some overnight there for the same reasons. Parents come from farther distances, kids can spend a week there and they go home for the weekends, that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, that didn't go through, but that was originally one of the first things that was proposed for that school. And I think it would have been, wouldn't have been a detriment to the village at all. I think it would have been an addition to this. These kids aren't running around town and this kind of stuff. They're autistic. And my brother was mentally handicapped from birth. And they've got programs for them, exercise, shops and stuff, that they make piecemeal stuff for companies and stuff like that. And they make their own stuff and they have an actually store to sell it on Main Street. They sell their own products. So it's good for the kids and good for the community at the same time.
The land certainly has, environmental sensitivities, but I think, and that still needs to be explored, but the owner has been kind of a good steward of other properties. So there's reason to have, optimism.
That's good news. Old business. Any discussion on old business?
No, I already mentioned it, so what I was,
The sidewalk.
the sidewalks and the stop sign.
Right.
Yeah.
New business. Okay, public comment. Ray, you got something to say. I know you do. I know you got something to say.
Yes.
I think the sidewalk idea is a great idea for a lot of, not just that street, just streets in general around the town.
Right.
But it's all about walking these days, running and biking. We don't have a lot of sidewalks to connect different villages to each
So
other.
you'd rather see people biking and walking than bringing their cars in the road.
And we've been talking about East Bay so long now, and getting over the tooth about it, but I think that this coming year, we're gonna be putting that forward and seeing that we've done. They're used to Pete, who've been here forever, and you can see some of the properties have the grade from the old sidewalk. From what used to tell me is that the sidewalk used to go from, say, Bay Street all the way down to the East Bay Lodge. Okay, and that is one of the highest trafficked areas in the summertime, people walking to the beach. So I think that's an excellent way to have it also, just like Parker Road. And so those are the things I think should be high on our list.
And then, John, if I may mention too, the other part of it is if you're coming down Main Street and you're getting on to East Bay, there is a section that doesn't have any sidewalk. So you have to walk on somebody's grass.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it needs to continue, because all of a sudden the sidewalk just stops, and then you've got to cross over East Bay, and then you pick up another sidewalk. So it needs to continue all the way around, so people walking down Main Street can get onto East Bay easily.
Yeah, right there at East Bay and Old Mill Road, across there, that's what you're talking to.
Yeah, but it's on the water side, yes. And
It stops at Bay Street, I think, it stops there, yes. Okay, I agree with you on that too.
Oh, I have a question. Why is it we can't access our beautiful public beaches till they decide to take a chain of the thing down to 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning? We lose out on 2 to 3 hours of beautiful.
So people sleep on them at night.
What's that?
People go down there and they sleep in their cars at night, they
In the
can't
morning.
go.
In the morning.
Yeah, but
Yeah, but they don't get out.
But they don't open it until for a certain hour.
They're doing
They
that,
instituted that a long time ago.
yeah, they're doing that at Joshua's Pond now too, we're thinking about putting a chain there. There's also been a number of drug
Oh, why
dealers.
can't we open at 6 a.m.?
Well, that's where we have to work with a town staff, if there's somebody to come out and unlock it at 6 a.m. I understand that. If you can walk around it, it's not a problem, taking a car in there, that's what the issue is at this point. There's been gang tagging at that Joshua's Pond, same tagger hit, the school, the base groups, the community center's just been taken down. And at the same, also they tagged something down on Seaview Avenue, somebody
So
stole
it's not
it,
happening at night.
it's happening at night.
That's what I'm talking about, opening beach.
They don't have manpower to do.
Yeah, it's a question of getting the manpower from the town to
How many
people.
tigers wake up at 6 in the morning is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I understand that, and we'll
But then they're
we'll
sleeping,
bring that up.
and they don't have people that go and lock it, they need to get up, go.
They open them on the parking lot, like 6 o'clock in the morning. First that, 6.
Sure.
Thank you.
Bill, any questions?
Always talking, but we can't hear him, he's on mute. Tell him to do it.
You're on mute?
I think he said, good job.
Okay, make a motion. Okay, I'm
My
sorry.
question, Gate Street, I must have missed, like, you took down the building, what are we doing for this summer? Are we, any project?
In the old Osterville Base School on West Bank, that's being taken down. We are working with, we've been talking about this for years also.
I know.
We want to finish that property. There's gonna be public bathrooms there, small public bathrooms. Hopefully they'll be electronically locked so that we can sleep there at night. There will be a new playground that we're, working now on the playground. Jen is on that, Diane is on that. We're figuring out now what kind of equipment we want there. We have a appropriation from last year or the year before for $1.3 million to go ahead and do that. There's also, where the old tennis courts used to be, where now it's gravel there. We're talking about putting a few parking spaces there and just into the property towards the tennis courts, putting it a basketball court / street hockey court. So those are all what's planned for that property. We're working right now with the town on the plans. We've been working since 2008 on this, so it's about time that people's grandkids who are now their grandkids are trying to figure out if they can play playground. So I'm pushing hard on this, that we can get it done. We have some funding for that. And we hope to have that broken in the spring. Okay, so that's the plan right now. And, they did a wonderful job with the ball field down there. We just need to finish the other pieces that we actually had a consultant here at this room, who was using clickers to tell us what we wanted. And that plan has been there for 15, 20 years now.
We just want to jump in, the spring of next year, not this year.
No, it's spring of next year, yeah, yeah.
So
So,
no work will be done this year, except for cleaning up.
except for cleaning up, I believe, and then it'll be spring of next year when we put the rest of it in.
Will they plant grass there, like just?
The whole thing is going to be, it's going to be pavement where pavement belongs and grass where grass belongs. So it's gonna be a really nice facility. And I'm just tired of talking about, we're all tired of talking, about it. So now that I'm sitting in this position, I'm gonna be a pain in the neck until we get that funding.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, we don't have a building, the building was gonna be very expensive. Fine, we're okay with that. There's so many people who wanna bring their kids down there, and what's down there is pathetic now. That was taken from somewhere else just as a temporary. So believe me, we're working on it right now.
That's great.
We have a
That
meeting
baseball field
tomorrow.
like legit, so that they can have, you know, yeah, like.
Pardon? What, you said Lily?
They planted.
Yeah.
I understand,
Oh, they do.
when we designed that, Patty Machado was the
Right.
recreation director.
Right,
They said at the time that what was needed was not Little League field, but softball fields.
right, so that they can have tournaments.
Adult softball.
Okay.
So there is a league around here, and I understand, I think they're coming this year. I hope they're not. I hope they are.
Yeah.
But we wanted that to happen, and we
Right.
took, we built this according to what the town thought was needed, so that they could play baseball or softball, no lights there, it gets dark, they go to Wimpy's and have a beer or dinner, or
Exactly.
Chris. So that's gonna help everybody out, so, that's where we
So
stand.
we do lots of them.
Yeah,
Now,
if
the
they do
tennis
play
courts
Little
over
League there, I
there,
understand too.
also pickleball courts,
Oh, shit, next one. Okay. So you check, John?
the tennis courts over there, are they also designed for pickleball?
They're lined for pickleball, as, the neighbors have been very, very okay with what's going on, but they said 9 o'clock, no earlier, and then off by, I think it's 5 or 6, okay?
Yeah, it is a little noisy.
Yeah, I understand that. And I mentioned something about maybe not having that only for tennis. But there is a big demand for that, and the neighbors are okay with it.
But the, elementary school place is jammed all
All the time.
Yeah, so we originally wanted that for pickleball. I had no idea what pickleball was. I remember paddleball when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got pickleball there, ball there. The fact that it was noisy, I didn't know at the time, and I think the neighbors have been pretty, patient with it so far. Yeah.
Thank you all for coming out. Make a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, so moved.
Thank you.